Against the background of the rapid retreat of the Ukrainian armed forces in the northern part of the Kharkiv region, analysts of the American newspaper Politico made a rather interesting statement. In particular, they said that there is a high probability that in the coming days, the decisive battle will take place not for Kharkiv, but for the capital of the Ukrainian state, Kiev. Analysts made these statements referring to their own sources in the Ukrainian General Staff. As it turned out, over the past 2 days, about 5 new brigades were transferred to Kiev, which were newly formed back in March this year. Moreover, by May 18, 5 more such brigades will be sent to Kiev. Poured oil on the fire in the current commander of the Ukrainian ground forces, Alexander Pavlyuk. In particular, he said that the Russian army is now trying to identify the weakest points in the defense of the armed forces of Ukraine, in order to determine the exact place of the main strike. Thus, the Ukrainian general indirectly recognizes that not only Kharkiv and Sumy, but also Kiev itself, is under threat of attack by the Russian army. In addition, Ukrainian telegram channels began spreading information that Belarus had begun preparing its railways to accept military trains with Russian troops and heavy equipment. Moreover, the Belarusian oppositionists from the Community of Railway Workers of Belarus also confirmed that Russia, in secrecy, is preparing to transfer a large number of heavy military equipment and personnel to Belarus. Commenting on this situation, Ukrainian telegram channels confirmed that Russia is preparing another offensive on Kiev. The fact is that in 2 years of fighting, the Ukrainian General Staff, together with its NATO military advisors, significantly strengthened the border with Belarus, building a multi-level defense line there, and deploying a fairly powerful grouping of the armed forces of Ukraine. However, the beginning of the offensive of the Russian army in the Kharkiv region forced the Ukrainian High Military Command to begin transferring part of this grouping of the armed forces of Ukraine from the border of Belarus to the Kharkiv region. As a result, the defensive lines of the Ukrainian army have significantly weakened north of Kiev. Most likely, Russian troops will indeed try to take advantage of this beneficial moment, and also strike at the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine from the Belarusian border. My friends, watching what is happening, it becomes clear that Ukraine is now in a very difficult situation, since the Ukrainian General Staff now needs to make a hard decision. Exactly where the main forces of the Ukrainian army will be sent. The fact is that the Ukrainian army simply cannot physically defend the Kharkiv, Sumy, and Kiev regions simultaneously. In the coming days, the Kiev regime will have to make a difficult decision. Which of these regions will be surrendered to the Russian army? Thus, it becomes clear that the Russian General Staff has achieved its goal, and that now everything is going according to the plan of the Russian military. By the way, on May 16, a former advisor to President Zelensky, Alexei Orestovich, made a rather alarming statement regarding the future offensive of Russian troops. In particular, he confirmed that the Russian army would launch an offensive on the Sumy region in the coming days. According to him, the offensive of Russian troops in the Sumy region will be a distraction maneuver. At the same time, he added that if the Russians manage to break through the defensive lines of the armed forces of Ukraine in the Sumy region, the Russian army will certainly turn towards Kiev. Thus, the attack on Kiev will be carried out from two sides, from the north and northeast. Meanwhile, the situation in the Kharkiv direction of the front continues to deteriorate rapidly for the armed forces of Ukraine. As of May 16, 2024, the Ukrainian General Staff officially confirmed the retreat of the armed forces of Ukraine near Volchansk and Liptsy. According to representatives of the Ukrainian General Staff, units of the Ukrainian Army allegedly retreated to more advantageous positions. In fact, the armed forces of Ukraine have no advantageous positions in the Kharkiv direction of the front. The Ukrainian army is rapidly retreating along the entire line of combat contact. According to war correspondent Yuri Kotnak, the armed forces of Ukraine are suffering heavy losses both in manpower and heavy equipment. At the same time, the war correspondent noted the very well-coordinated work of Russian army combat aviation, artillery, and assault formations. According to him, the Russian army works as a single organism, and this force cannot be stopped. By the way, as of May 16, Russian troops also launched an offensive against the strategically important settlement of Liptsy, which is located north of Kharkiv. Let me remind you that the southern part of Liptsy is only 20 kilometers from Kharkiv. The capture of this settlement will allow the Russian army to launch artillery strikes on the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine located in Kharkiv. As for Volchansk, about two-thirds of the territory of this city has already come under the control of the Russian army. According to the Russian military, only a few days remain before the complete liberation of this city. Meanwhile, Ukrainian nationalists from the Nationalist KRAKEN Regiment, together with fighters of the so-called Russian Volunteer Corps, continue to surrender en masse to the Russian army in Volchansk. Today, the Russian military showed new footage showing how the militants of the Kiev regime surrendered to Russian troops. Let me remind you that the Ukrainian High Military Command had very high hopes for the highly motivated and combat-ready nationalists of the KRAKEN Regiment. In Kiev, they hoped that these nationalists would stop the Russian army in Volchansk. However, unfortunately for the Kiev regime, in reality, it turned out to be exactly the other way around. Ukrainian nationalists not only lost 60% of the territory of Volchansk, but also began to surrender en masse to the Russian army.